on your business career. So 847 doors. And this is a big number. This is I think the work-life balance. We've gone over like a lot of this, heavy personal life work, which I think is so important. But, you did that also. This is a big portfolio, 847 units. How did you do it? You had your kids going through this. You had your wife. You met her when you were 21.
Yeah.
And you built this amount of units. So tell us about that. Tell us about how that was getting started. How your kids were when you were, building this large portfolio in this business that you have, which is, doing very well and we'd love to hear more about.
Yeah. Well, I want to give you some background before I dive in to talk about building the real estate, because I don't want you to think that I just went literally from living in that trailer, dirt broke by myself, to being able to start buying real estate. Because again, like anything, it does take work, so that happened in like 2002, somewhere in that range. And I didn't really start getting into real estate until 2009, so I had, 7-ish years of working on myself and that relationship and that belief, right? That's really what it took. And during that time, I moved out of that trailer and I bought my first home in I don't remember, 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. I bought that house. This is where we lived. This is where I raised my kids for several years in this house, but I was working a long ways away from home. And so was my wife, and my kids were going to school, right? A long ways away. So we had 3 cars every single day that would go from our house to school and work and stuff. And we were driving about 25 miles one way, 3 times every single day. And so you do the math on that, right? You're talking 150 miles a day that we're driving. And this is like 2009, roughly. And so you look at the fuel prices back in 2009, they were really high. I sat down and I did the math and I figured out that I could move 25 miles closer to where we worked and went to school. And I could save almost enough money to pay for a second mortgage. So I bought a house.
Wow.
Now I have 2 houses in 2009. Well, no one was buying houses in 2009, right? So I had my other house, my first house, I tried to sell it and nobody would buy it. So what do you do with a house you can't sell? You rent it out.
Put a tenant.
Yeah, you put a tenant in it, you rent it, right? And so that's exactly what I did. And that's the precipice of how I started in real estate. Was I had a house I couldn't sell, so I had to rent it. And I sat down and I looked at it and I'm like, I'm making a couple $100 a month on this thing and I'm not doing any work. Let's go do it again. So as I started in the single family space first, right? That's really the point of this. And I was buying houses. I was buying things from auctions. I was buying things from wholesalers. I was flipping houses. And then I discovered what's called the BRRRR strategy. So you buy, you rehab, you rent, you refinance it, get all your cash back out. And so I actually built a fairly large portfolio of single family duplexes and triplexes over the course of about 10 years.
This is like 09 to 2019.
Yeah, 09 to 2019. Exactly. So that 10-year span from 2009 to 2019, I actually did over 100 real estate transactions in the single family and small multifamily space, below 5 units, four units and lower. I actually joke that I've done more real estate transactions than most realtors in my town.
Yeah, you probably have.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Yeah. Were you using other people's money during this time?
Yeah, I had several hard money lenders, a couple of people that were actual like investors, things like that. They were helping me, and giving me money and I was paying them back and that type of thing. Never like a syndication, anything like that, but definitely had, friends and family giving me money. Yeah.
And you've done a good job with growing because now you raise capital, you raise a lot of money actually. And were these same investors that you were building your book of business with the same investors you have today? Or is there a transition to different type of investors? Or is it like, how has that process been?
Definitely there's been a transition, right? The people I was working with before, not a lot of them understand or see the vision of larger multifamily like that. They really want to be able to walk up and touch the building, so they were really focused on local properties that were right here. But the problem is, so 2019, I'm sitting here looking at my portfolio and I have 5 kids that are mostly teenagers at this point, right? I have an amazing wife that's still supporting me and pushing me. I have a full-time job, an actual W-2 job, which, and I could tell you the reason I did that. I don't know right now. That's a whole other story. And I own my own financial firm. I was doing investments. I had help people investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And then I had this giant portfolio of single family houses and duplexes and triplexes. So I was essentially working 3 full-time jobs. And so I looked at my life and I said, the amount of real estate I'm going to have to acquire to replace these other 2 incomes, it's going to take me another 10 years, 20 years maybe in the single family space. So I had to do something different. And so I spent all of 2019 just learning everything I possibly could about commercial real estate. And I read, you can see back here, there's hundreds of books. I read every book I could find on commercial real estate. I learned about apartments. I learned about self-storage. I learned about mobile home parks, industrial development. 2019 for me was just like learning junkie mode. And I finally settled on apartment buildings because I had all this rental experience. That was my reason. All these other asset classes, they're still good. They're great. There's a lot of great asset classes out there, but I had the experience. So that's the reason I went to apartments. And so in 2020, I decided to go full bore into multifamily. And I started selling off all of my single family and rolling all that money into multifamily. I joined a mentorship group to help me buy apartment buildings. And that was a great experience. I later became a coach with that mentorship group where I was actually teaching people how to buy apartment buildings. I did that for a couple of years. And then I realized I'm going to run out of money. Because even though I had this big portfolio, I had a fairly large net worth. Eventually that goes to zero. So I figured out that I had to learn how to start syndicating, which is where you pool people's money together to buy bigger buildings. And to do that, I joined another mentorship group where it's all about raising capital and bringing investors together and how to attract people to your properties. And that's really been my focus now for the last couple of years, is finding big buildings and then helping people invest in those big buildings.
That's fantastic. And so in your coaching business, so you also are a coach.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that business. I mean, that's fantastic also. So you help other people really do what you are achieving.
Yeah. Well, I've done a couple of different versions of coaching. It's really evolved over the last couple of years. My very first coaching experience was with a big group that had, I don't even know, 400 students, 500 students. And they would assign me a series of people to coach one-on-one inside that group. And then I actually helped a company launch their own coaching program from scratch. They'd never had anything before. And I helped go in there and design it. It's been about 6 months really helping them get off the ground. And that was always planned to be a short-term thing. I was just helping them launch it. And then currently today, I just coach people one-on-one, right? So somebody says, I want to get started buying apartments, and we just do it on a one-on-one basis. I am toying with the idea of launching my own group program in the near future to help people get started buying apartment buildings.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, there's a long transition here. You started doing the house in 2009 up to 2019. And, going back to, I'll call it the work-life balance. Now you got 5 kids and you're going through this process. How often were you home? Were you on the road a lot? How many markets were you buying houses in? Or you said it was all Magic Valley. Is that correct?
All right where I live, yeah.
That's a lot of business. I mean, for 10 years, so you're talking,
10 deals a year. Constantly doing deals.
Yeah, all the time. And so the work-life balance was I took the kids. I involved the kids. They'd go to houses with me. When I was going just to drive by one, I would throw a kid in the car and they'd go drive around with me. As long as it wasn't a safety hazard, like a really bad construction zone or something like that, they were with me all the time. And I just tried to involve them in the business as much as I could.
That's awesome. That's something I really want to do with my son once he's of age. Trevor,
Yeah, me too. And are any of them involved in real estate now? Or are you working with any of them currently?
No, I'm not. I wish I were. But I guess that one of the negative things that happens with entrepreneurs sometimes, right? So we do burn the candles at both ends and we work really hard. All of my kids have decided at this point in their life that they don't want to work that hard and they want to be W-2 employees. And they want to go to work for 8 to 5 and come home and be able to live the life they want to live. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the life they want. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. But I attribute it to they saw how hard dad worked. They knew that it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows, right? Like truthfully, sometimes we had to eat ramen noodles because I had to put all this money into a house. It happens. So I think they wanted more stability and more peace of mind.
Yeah, hopefully that maintains. I always had the idea of wanting to have a W-2 job that paid enough and was able to allow those things. And I always just found that the market just wasn't stable. I was working for a company up until 2009 when the great financial crisis happened. And, I thought I had a stable position and turned out not so much, and it was one of those things where, my goals for that kind of thing just changed over time, where I realized that I wanted to do more, or wanted to achieve more, or wanted to promote that, in many ways, when you were in that W-2 role, it was a learned experience that wasn't always the way, you wanted it to be one way, and there's how it actually is. And it's funny, my dad had a very similar, he just told me this just recently, that his father was an entrepreneur, and my family ran Mexican restaurants through New Mexico, Arizona, and Los Angeles. My grandparents did. And then my father, when he was very young, was a cook in those restaurants. My family has a lot of these great Mexican recipes. I'm actually a very good Mexican cook, actually, just for anyone who's listening. But my dad just said, he saw how hard his dad worked and he wanted to have a more stable position. So he started working as a federal probation and parole officer. And that was in some ways limiting at the time. He had a great retirement, and that's what actually the benefit for him. But he said it flat out. He said exactly what you did. I saw how hard my dad worked, and he said dad had some definite, career ups and career downs when they were operating those restaurants with things that happened in business. And he said he saw that. So yeah, it's definitely not a lone sentiment by any means.
Well, Senate, I guess I'm going to get personal, but how well are your positions in real estate cash flowing right now for you?
It's I've been more focused on the net worth side of things than on the cash flow side of things. We pulled out of a bunch of cash flowing single family houses, and we rolled them all into multifamily syndications. And when we did that, we put a lot of things into the value add space. So when you do a value add apartment, you're only usually you're a year to 2 years before you start really cash flowing, right? So the last couple of years, the answer to that has been almost zero. Now we're finally getting to that point where we're getting cash flow back and we're getting it to come in on a regular basis. And, we're able to pay all the bills and work on that. But the net worth really has been the growth.
So your strategy right now is to have a big payday in the next few-ish years.
Yes.
And then right off into the sunset?
Well, actually, so my dream is to be a full-time passive investor. That's like my dream. So what I'm going to do is when I have a big cash flow event or a cash out event of some kind, I'm going to take a certain amount of that money and I'm going to put it into other people's LP positions. The goal is there to generate that cash flow at that time. Then of course, I'm not a sit on the beach kind of guy. So I'll take the other half of it and I'll put back into my own positions to do it again, right? To keep that cycle going. It's always been the goal is focus on the net worth first. I actually joke sometimes that I am the poorest millionaire you'll ever meet, right? Because all of my stuff's in net worth, right? But the monthly cash flow, yeah.
So you want to be an active passive investor, LP positions, but constantly growing it is what I heard. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's the goal. Is always to be active. Right? I can't sell a couch. I'd be bored.
Yeah, I don't have any plans to retire ever.
To me, retirement means working because you want to, not because you have to.
Working on whatever you want, whenever you want.
Right.
There you go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd love to do something like you guys are doing right now. I'd love to just do a podcast and just sit around and talk to my friends, and don't have to worry about the money,
I wish that was the case.
If it makes you feel any better, Senate, I definitely still worry about money.
Maybe something.
Yeah. So I was just going to, I'm working on getting to where, Senate's at, man. I'm with you, dude. If you want to become full-time passive, you're going to be there way before me, bro.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I will echo a little bit of what you said, and that this podcast has been great. We've had some stories that have been on here that have been a lot more sensitive than I actually would have thought before we started this. And every one of them has had some pretty great insight for the listeners. They really have. Every one of them that we've had, Trevor and I have kind of say, what'd you think about that one? And we go, whoa, that was, this was a piece that I didn't expect to get shared or something else. And I kind of have left the podcast going, wow, I really do feel like, because we're doing this to connect individuals, to definitely get people, to get them included into that understanding that they're not alone in whatever it is, that they're dealing with as dads. I think that was kind of my goal when we started was, I had people kind of share with me when I became a dad, you kind of get inducted into the dad circles, the dad has people who, you knew previously. But then there was still this other level of kind of not having always resources to go out and, hear those other people who have similar stories. Because I'll tell you, from your story that you shared with us, there are other people who've had some other stories that are, not the same, but kind of harrowing. You hear these ones that were going, oh my gosh, what a bomb that was, kind of a thing. And every one of them that we've had also has had a really fantastic story, overcoming the odds, or maybe not even overcoming the odds, but maybe thinking that the odds were so stacked against them and they found out they could do it for whatever the reason was. And we've had these guests that have just really been so great to have them on and share with other people who might be in that kind of imposter syndrome moment going, whoa, I don't need to stay here. I can grow, I can overcome, I can build, I can do whatever it is. And on the retirement front, for me, I don't ever want to retire. The giving back part, I think, is one that I'd like to figure out a little bit better. That's one that I really want to work through to see if I can find a better, way to have an outlet and do more charity works. That'd be my big goal.
That's great. I'm right there with you. I love to give back and support. I'm very, very active in the local chambers of commerce in my town. Like I really work really hard with them. And my wife, Carrie's very active on, the local foundations. She's a very big mental health advocate. She actually has it's funny, we're on Real Estate Dads, and she has a podcast called Sick Moms. She talks about the mental health struggles of moms.
Wow. That sounds very important.
Oh yeah, it's very important. And some of them get really intense, right? So there's some.
I bet they do.
Yeah. It's totally open and raw. And like they talk about, oh boy, it gets intense. And the point is because we want to do the same thing. We want to give back. We want to help. That's why I do coaching, right? Like I don't make a lot of money coaching. I do it because somebody helped me when I started, and I wouldn't be where I am today. If Gino Barbaro hadn't helped me, I would not be where I am today. And so I do it because he did it.
That's great. It's great. One topic, and, I'm only coming back to this as we mentioned a second ago, but, the sick moms, that's one on a Real Estate Dads podcast, which is not, I don't think this episode, but I've had several, fathers tell me, when they brought up, there's been a postpartum moment at home, have it be relatively harrowing. Some of these situations where it's like, whoa, and some individuals that, you never would have really known, but you also find out how common it is and how prevalent that I've heard that to actually be way more than I ever thought prior to having people share with me. So that's great that your wife's doing that. That sounds like a fantastic, other piece that she's sharing with the world.
Yeah, it is great. I'm very grateful she's doing it. We didn't tell that part of my story, but I had one of those too. I mean, I was, hey, I get it. It happens, right? Like I remember one day I literally was laying on the front, on the living room floor of my trailer, right? And pounding my fists on the floor because I was so upset. The kids were in bed and I just was depressed and didn't know what I was doing. It's real. It really is real. So I'm glad you guys are doing this, and I'm glad she's doing what she's doing because we need to talk about it more.
Sam, this has been such a great interview. We're at the 1 hour mark. What are your thoughts here? Are we, do we have anything else we want to cover?
I feel like I got way more than I bargained for already. I'm kind of flabbergasted and just impressed with the story that Senna just told, and grateful that I got to hear it. And as per the usual with these things, I got a ton of useful golden nuggets. I guess the answer is no, not so much. I don't even, I feel like I just got fire hosed with just so much benefit right now from Senate. So I'm just like genuinely grateful, man, that you came on and shared with us. Really am.
I feel the exact same way. My wife usually at the end of the day, how's your day? And every time I've had one of these podcasts, I go, oh my God, we had this guest on. And I tell her, and I don't want to say it in the sense of like, I'm a happy cry kind of guy in the movie. I don't cry when the person dies. It's for me, it's when they do the thing. They do the thing, they overcome the thing. That's what I, get choked up. So I finish the things. I'm glad Trevor appreciates that. And that's why I've been so pleased to have these stories. I really appreciate you being honest. I'm just coming on and just sharing. I mean, I was totally waiting for I had a totally different expectation of the show prior. I was going to be like, fine, kids, it was t-ball and soccer. I was totally expecting there to be this story of like juggling the 5 kids. And I just am so thankful that you gave us this other piece of knowledge. And I when I hear this, I go, there are people who need to hear this.
I mean, I'm totally going to, I'll admit it to you guys right now. I'm going to talk to my wife about coaching. I think that's, I've been curious about it. I've been curious about it for a while, for years. And so that's like, thank you. Hey, thanks for sharing.
Always do it when it's going well, right? Because you want to get better. And the thing is, Max, I have all those stories too, right? We did t-ball. All of my kids, my girls were in cheerleading and gym. The boys were all in football or baseball or something like that. And everybody has that, right? So let's talk about the real stuff, the hard stuff. That's why I decided to go that route,
Well, I'm glad you did. Yeah, absolutely. I have a personal therapist that I go see, and I have taken my wife to go with me to see her previously, and mine is old. And I mean, like I'm kind of always waiting to get an email saying she's retiring. And she was referred to me by a friend when we first started going to go see her. And I've always appreciated her because she does not pull any punches. She's just straight up, you're doing this wrong. Don't do that. Do this. And I always thought therapy was supposed to be me sitting on a couch talking about my issues with my parents or whatever. And no. None of that. It's all just the most active, like, this is what you need to do. And it is funny because she's a therapist, but I would really describe her more as a coach. And the fact that she's old is this piece that's odd and like this weird sense of like being this wise older person who I've like listened to as a result of her just directness of both experience and also just like do this. And then those things that I've done, I've always been thankful for her engagement in regards to advice. Because the therapists that I've seen who have been living long, let's just talk through things have not been as they're beneficial as this one. But yeah, no, I'm a big advocate.
Unless somebody has like serious trauma, that a coach is better than a therapist for most people.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm not really sure how much therapy I've gotten from this. I really describe it more as coaching, kind of a thing. And because the stuff we go through, yeah, like, and I think I think it's pretty accurate. I think the idea of therapy is a little more based on that kind of view that I had, with more of the couch and this internal view. And on a total tangent to this, one thing I've heard recently about a lot of, kids' issues in today's world about talking about their feelings is that there are some ways where it's constructive and there's other ways where it becomes not constructive because they're overly repeating problems that are not actually as big as they're making them on an internal basis, but because they're repeating them over and over and over again, there's not actually a step to fix. It's just this kind of repeat situation of wallowing and in that sense, falling down in that way. And that's something that, I think about in regards to, work hard, do the things you're supposed to, get accomplishments, get confidence, get your kids confidence, get your kids to do the things that get them the skills to be able to progress and overcome, all of life's curveballs and punches and navigating, what we all need to be, the dads who want to for our families.
One thing that you said about the repeating the problem over and over again, it's almost like affirmations. You've all heard affirmations or incantations and you're supposed to say positive mantras to yourself. Well, but if you say negative things or you just talk about the negative things over and over, the same thing's going to happen, right? So you got to focus on the positive and talk about the positive.
It's silly, but it's so true. It's like, you turn everything into, always look for either the positive or the lesson, which is a positive. Don't complain about anything you're not going to do something about.
Yeah. That's the truth. That's the truth. If you're talking about it, it's time to, attack it.
I can't stand that anymore. If I hear that in my house, I'm like, stop. If you're not going to, especially with the kids, if you're going to cry about it, I'm taking it away, right? You're never getting it again. Go to your room and cry.
That should be on our accountability call, Trevor.
What's that?
If you're whining about something, like, hey, your job is to fix it, not to talk about it.
Yeah. Agreed. Oh, you know who told me that? Arnold.
I got to read that book. You're telling me to read his book. I got to read his book.
It's all the same stuff that we know about positive mental attitude, right? It's like The Gap and the Gain or 7 Habits, all the stuff that we've all read, right? But the Arnold version, where he's just like, basically he's just like, stop being a bitch.
Hey, he's right. Hey, before we cut this, Senate, how do guests get in contact with you?
Best thing is just my website, senateeskridge.com. All of my socials are on there. I've even got some free resources. I have a book coming out. It's going to be on there. Download for free. Also, I have a course, Passive Investing 101, completely free of charge.
Great. And we'll also have links to Sennett and his website on our Real Estate Dads podcast website. And if you are a listener and you've got a fantastic story about dadness, work-life balance, amazing story of overcoming the odds, please get in contact with us, and also join us on the Slack channel where we have our Real Estate Dads Slack channel where we go through deals and connect the dads who are listeners on the show. Sennett, thanks so much. We appreciate you. And we will look forward to getting an update from you, hopefully on another episode.
Thanks for having me.